I quite like the idea of being able to walk to work or my kids being able to walk to school. I like the idea of a local post office, pub and cafe where you can work sometimes and know the names of the staff. I think walking is good for you, not only because of the exercise, but also because by looking around and taking in the changing of the seasons and your surroundings, you feel more tied to a place, more committed to it. For virtually all my life, such claims, rhetorically at least, were expressed by conservatives. Community cohesion, localism, politics being rooted in a sense of place. But increasingly, certainly in the last few years, it seems that if you favour such things, then you'll be labelled as dangerous, degenerate and extremist. That certainly seems true for the Daily Telegraph, who've published an extraordinary article with this headline. Labour opens door to Stalinist 15-minute cities across Britain. Because apparently sending hundreds of thousands of people to gulags in Siberia and having a local pub and post office you can walk to are basically the same thing. Cycling to your cutesy local cafe on a bashly bike through wildflowers and frolicking children, well, that's essentially the same as living in a police state with collectivised farms. Now, this story of 15-minute cities, nice, convenient, livable cities, has long been an obsession for parts of the right-wing media. You've heard it being a World Economic Forum conspiracy for years, so why are we hearing about it all over again? Well, because Oxford City Council, ground zero for this stuff in the UK, are trying to discourage unnecessary trips by car through the middle of the historic city. And most recently, Labour ministers have said they will allow councils such as Oxford to use driver licence databases to impose fines on drivers who fall foul of traffic filters. Under Oxford's particular scheme, drivers would need a residence permit that allows 100 days of free travel per year through 6 traffic filters during operating hours, kind of like a congestion zone. And meanwhile, a separate permit would allow 25 days of free travel per year through 6 congestion charge locations during charging hours, and after this, drivers would face fines if they travel without the relevant permission. Broadly speaking, we've had this stuff in the capital city for over 2 decades. Responding to the proposals, Greg Smith, the shadow transport minister, in other words, a Tory, said this. This is the blueprint for a national rollout. Labour has given the green light for draconian councils like Oxfordshire to police how people live, move and drive, using cameras and fines backed by DVLA data. Don't we already do that for speeding? I think we do. Duncan White, director of the Alliance of British Drivers, which I'd never previously heard of, the Alliance, millions of drivers, how many members I wonder, probably in the dozens, said that 15-minute cities were an abomination, adding it was perverse and a Stalinist approach to social control. He also claimed it is an encroachment on civil liberties and it is a page out of the East Germany playbook. A congestion zone is like living with the Stasi or having a family member disappear. A reminder, this is all being introduced by a council that people voted for. They voted for the councillors then do something. If it doesn't work or you don't like it, you can vote for someone else. That's the point. A council doing something with a democratic mandate, even if you're not a fan, is nothing like East Germany. White also said this. With the 15-minute city, you'll have to, in effect, apply for an internal passport to go and visit your granny. These people are absolutely mad. From a civil liberties perspective, it is nonsensical. From an operational point of view, it is bizarre. This is an argument against road tax. I just want to see my granny and you're taxing me. It's a tax on seeing my grandmother. I mean, technically, yeah, of course, you're right. I just want to go to the shops and get food for my kids. You're taxing me just for moving in a car. Well, yeah, how are we going to pay for the roads? How do you expect to have a clean Liverpool city centre if it's a free-for-all? We have to regulate it. You know, the exact same people, almost all of them on the right, talk about state failure. Nothing works. But they don't believe in the state. You've got to believe in the state for the state to do stuff. But they hate the state. They hate the state because they're libertarians. And guess what? A state overseen by libertarians, which basically we've had in many parts of this country for a really long time, means the state doesn't work. I walked past a vape shop the other day. Disposable vapes were criminalised a year ago in June 2025. You can't buy disposable vapes anymore. On the front of the shop, they were advertising disposable vapes. How can you do that? Because we don't have trading standards anymore. The Tories basically defunded it because they don't believe in the state. But then they say, oh my God, why can't we enforce any laws? Well, because you've got rid of the people that enforce the laws. Jack Cousins, head of the roads policy at the AA, had a slightly more sensible response. He said this: what local authorities sometimes struggle to remember is that the car remains and continues to remain the main method which people use to travel around our country. Cars coming into the town centres generate a huge amount of parking revenue for local authorities, and the local high street is dependent on strong, consistent footfall, and cars are probably the easiest way for people to get in and out of town centres. We don't want barriers that harm the national economy and the local economy. I agree. It's a balancing act. You've got different interests. We need more walkable cities with a better quality of life. We want kids to be able to walk to schools. But we don't want to make life impossible for some people. We don't want certain businesses to just basically go to rack and ruin. People in this country started the Industrial Revolution. They discovered penicillin and gravity. I'm pretty sure they can manage traffic management. Right? Pretty sure. Right? Somebody in this country worked out that we have something called evolutionary adaptation. Pretty sure we can work out how to get a few cars out of the centre of Oxford. No need for the conspiracy theories. I'm sick of it. Kieran.
Yeah, I'm also very sick of these bizarre conspiracy theories. I think this is such an interesting question, and I'm really glad that we're covering it. Because it speaks to, probably this is going to sound too storied, but let me try and explain what I mean. It speaks to a split within conservatism in this country that's never been resolved between the kind of high Tory or paleo-conservative, as they used to be called, people who look out for the kind of the agricultural interest, the community interest, people who are never, or at least profess to have never been totally comfortable with modernity, the Industrial Revolution, modern world, right? Traditional conservatism, really traditional conservatism. On the one hand, and on the other hand, a kind of, basically what the Conservative Party has been for 150 years, which is a kind of free market, post-industrial, free market, if you want to say libertarian-like ideology. And every time those two versions of conservatism have clashed over the past 200, 300 years, the latter have won. The free market conservatism and that vision of kind of postmodern or post-industrial conservatism has won. And I suppose, and this is really important, Aaron, what they have in common is that they dislike the state, generally. Both those groups do have in common that they dislike the state. And that's really important here because the state has become a kind of bugbear in this whole discussion about 15-minute cities. And the irony is that the state is very often the only entity that can protect the kind of concerns of the high Tories and the paleo-conservative, the community, the natural world, the traditions. The state is often the only entity that's able to protect those things from the free market and from the rampages of the free market and so on. So there's an interesting irony there. Final observation, I don't drive, but I do know from people that do, some of them, that they symbolize their car, they synonymize their car with freedom, with individualism and independence and freedom. So I can see how it becomes difficult in that context. The car stops just being a car, basically.
There's a comment here, a super chat, saying disposable vapes are legal to buy as long as they have a charging port. There are vending machines across the UK selling them. But they're not, it's a loophole, but the point is they're not meant to be disposable. It's a manufacturing loophole, yes. This was a big poster saying, buy disposable vapes here. The point is, and you're entirely right, they're not meant to be disposable. That's the whole point of having the port there. And believe it or not, this was opposite at school. Buy disposable vapes here. And the whole argument against these products, which has this loophole, you're absolutely right, was that they were appealing to young kids with really colourful advertising and certain kinds of flavours and whatnot. It's extraordinary. Just advertising it there. So it's concerning. And it gets really to the point of, the state. Another one is tobacco. counterfeit tobacco, smuggled tobacco, which people aren't paying tax on. And they would say, well, a right winger would say, well, tax is so high, you've incentivized smuggling. We got rid of trading standards. My dad, he smokes roll-ups sometimes. He's like, yeah, I pay £4 for tobacco, of course. Who'd be stupid enough to pay the tax on it, right? And that is the country we're in now, and that wasn't the case in this country 15, 20 years ago because we had a state apparatus that could deal with it. There is so much criminal activity in this country now from counterfeit goods, smuggling, money laundering, so much. What do you think Bitcoin is? I know lots of you are going to have Bitcoin that's not used for money laundering. Most of it is. What do you think NFTs were? You know, oh, this stupid guy just spent $3.5 million on an NFT over a tweet. What do you think it was? It's cleaning money. Anyway, we'll talk about that more at another date. Been a great show. And your point about this battle for the soul of conservatism, you know, they are liberals. They're hyper liberals. If you don't believe in place, if you don't believe in identity and bonds between human beings and tradition, if you don't believe in those things, and you just think people should just be in their car all the time and just buying shit, you're a liberal. You're a hyper liberal. Peter Hitchens would agree with us, right?
Yeah, and important to say, people will think of Thatcher straight away, right? When you say that, and that's totally legitimate because she's the most recent, profound expression of it. But actually, if you go back to the middle of the 19th century, you will find version 1 of conservatism losing to version 2 of conservatism with the Corn Laws, the repeal of the Corn Laws. Now, we're not going to go into that now, but it's been a dominant tendency in conservatism in this country for 2 centuries.
A comment here as well. All the expensive art scene is about money laundering, not just NFTs. Totally. Everywhere I look now, money laundering. Everywhere.